When an avoidant person comes back into your life, the situation may look familiar on the surface, but something important has changed. This time, you are not standing in the same place they left you. Their return usually happens after they notice that the emotional access they once had is no longer guaranteed. You stopped chasing, stopped explaining yourself repeatedly, and stopped carrying the entire connection on your shoulders. That absence creates a different kind of silence. They begin to recognize what your presence actually provided: consistency, emotional safety, patience, understanding, and a sense of stability they may have taken for granted. When all of that suddenly disappears, they are forced to experience the space they created. You are no longer waiting for them to decide your worth. You have already decided it for yourself, and that is where your strength begins. The biggest transformation is not that they returned, it is the person they encounter when they return. You did not simply distance yourself from them, you separated yourself from the version of you that tolerated uncertainty just to keep someone close. Before, you may have accepted minimal effort, explained away their withdrawal, and constantly tried to restore the connection whenever they pulled back. Now, something inside you has settled. Their absence gave you enough distance to see the relationship without constantly being consumed by it. Avoidant behavior often becomes more noticeable when the other person stops compensating for it. They may have assumed you would always remain emotionally available, even when they disappeared. But when that expectation disappears, they are confronted with something unfamiliar. You are no longer carrying the relationship for both of you. When they eventually approach you again, you do not have to become the person they remember. You do not need to immediately reassure them, explain everything you felt, or make their return emotionally comfortable. You are allowed to pause and observe. They may come forward uncertainly, while you remain clear about what you need. They may offer a small amount of attention while you maintain your boundaries. They may look for the emotional comfort they once received from you, while you protect the peace you worked hard to rebuild. This is not about punishing them or pretending you do not care. It is about responding from healing instead of reacting from old wounds. The avoidant may expect the same emotional environment they left behind, but they are meeting someone different now. You have learned that connection without consistency is not enough, and affection without reliability cannot sustain a healthy relationship. That difference can completely change the emotional dynamic. The avoidant may approach with uncertainty while you respond with calmness. They may offer occasional attention while you look for consistent behavior. They may want reassurance while you remain focused on protecting your emotional stability. You are no longer automatically reacting to every movement they make. You are watching what they actually do. That is a major shift because your attention is no longer controlled by their availability. You do not have to reject them angrily, and you do not have to accept them immediately either. You can simply observe. The person who once waited for every message can now decide whether a message deserves a response. The person who once tried desperately to understand every disappearance can now recognize the pattern without becoming consumed by it. Your evolution is what changes the entire interaction, because they can no longer rely on the old version of you. When an avoidant returns, they may unconsciously expect your emotions to rush toward them before they have demonstrated anything has changed. They may anticipate excitement, relief, warmth, or immediate forgiveness. They remember the version of you who quickly closed the distance whenever they reopened communication. But calm neutrality can communicate more than an emotional reaction ever could. You are not being cold simply because you are not overwhelmed by their return. You are showing that your emotional center no longer depends on what they decide to do. There is no need to create dramatic silence or deliberately punish them. Real composure is much quieter. You can acknowledge their presence without immediately surrendering your boundaries. You can listen without becoming emotionally attached to their words. You can remain respectful without pretending that the past never happened. That kind of calm tells them that something fundamental has changed. Your calmness becomes especially powerful because it removes the emotional urgency that once surrounded the relationship. Maybe their messages used to make your heart race. Maybe their silence used to leave you wondering what you had done wrong. Perhaps every small sign of attention felt like confirmation that the connection was still alive. But now you can see those moments differently. Their return does not automatically mean reconciliation, commitment, or transformation. It may simply be another moment in an existing pattern. Instead of allowing emotion to decide what everything means, you can step back and evaluate their behavior. Are they consistent? Are they communicating clearly? Are they taking responsibility? Are they making genuine effort? Or are they simply checking whether the old emotional door is still open? This level of awareness protects you from falling back into a cycle simply because someone returned. There is another important shift that happens when you stop over-explaining yourself. Previously, an avoidant person could retreat behind statements about being overwhelmed, needing space, or struggling with emotional intensity, while you worked harder to make the relationship easier for them. But when you remain grounded, there is less emotional chaos for them to point toward. You are not demanding constant reassurance. You are not creating unnecessary conflict. You are simply expecting mutual effort and basic consistency. This makes their own behavior much easier to see. They can no longer redirect every problem toward your emotional reaction because you are no longer reacting in the same way. Your stability places the focus back where it belongs, on the choices both people are making. That does not mean you are responsible for forcing them to change. It simply means you are no longer protecting them from the consequences of their own inconsistency. When they return, do not assume that their appearance automatically deserves celebration. Their absence created consequences, whether they intended it or not. You may have spent time rebuilding yourself, regaining confidence, and learning how to live without waiting for their next move. So when they suddenly reappear, you do not have to erase all of that growth just because they decided to come back. An avoidant may expect the emotional door to remain exactly where they left it, ready for them whenever they feel comfortable again. But healthy connection does not work that way. Returning is not the same as repairing. Contact is not the same as commitment. Missing someone is not the same as being prepared to build something stable with them. Your response should be based on what they consistently demonstrate, not simply on the fact that they have returned. If you immediately reward disappearing with overwhelming warmth, you may unintentionally reinforce the same cycle. The message becomes simple. They can withdraw whenever they want and still return to exactly the same emotional access whenever they feel ready. But when your response is measured, respectful, and grounded, the pattern becomes harder to repeat. You are not being cruel. You are simply refusing to pretend that disappearing has no impact. Your energy communicates that access to you now requires consistency. If they want closeness, they have to participate in creating a relationship where closeness can actually survive. You are no longer willing to provide unlimited emotional security while receiving uncertainty in return. This is not revenge, it is self-respect. It is the realization that your compassion should not require you to repeatedly abandon your own needs just to make another person comfortable. One simple question can also reveal a great deal. What made you reach out now? It does not need to be delivered with anger or suspicion. You do not have to make it sound like an accusation. In fact, its power comes from how simple and neutral it is. Avoidant people can sometimes feel comfortable when they can reconnect without discussing why they disappeared. Ambiguity allows them to step back into the connection without immediately facing the emotional consequences of stepping away. But this question gently places responsibility back into their hands. Instead of rushing to explain how much you missed them or telling them how relieved you are to hear from them, you allow them to explain their intention. You are not chasing an answer, you are gathering information. You are giving them an opportunity to show whether their return has genuine purpose or whether they simply miss the access they once had. That question also interrupts the automatic pattern that may have existed between you. Instead of you becoming the person who explains everything, reassures everything, and repairs everything, they now have to participate in the conversation. Why now? What changed? What are they hoping will happen? They may give you a clear answer, a vague answer, a defensive answer, or they may avoid answering altogether. Each response gives you information. You do not need to force honesty from them. You simply need to pay attention to what happens when clarity enters the room. Someone who genuinely wants to reconnect should eventually be capable of explaining their intentions and acknowledging the impact of their previous absence. Someone who only wants emotional access may become uncomfortable as soon as accountability becomes part of the conversation. The beauty of this approach is that you are not asking the question to save the relationship. You are asking because you want to understand what is actually happening. There is a major difference between seeking clarity and seeking reassurance. Reassurance says, "Please tell me you still care." Clarity says, "Help me understand why you are here." One places your emotional security in their hands. The other keeps your judgment in your own hands. That distinction protects you. You are no longer trying to convince them to choose you. You are evaluating whether their behavior is compatible with the kind of connection you now want. Their answer matters, but their actions after the answer matter even more. Anyone can say they missed you. The real question is whether they are capable of showing up differently. Another powerful change is learning to protect your emotional door. Keeping that door closed does not mean becoming bitter, hostile, or intentionally distant. It means you no longer give immediate access simply because someone knocks. For a long time, your empathy may have made it easy for an avoidant person to return without confronting the impact of their behavior. You understood their fears, you made excuses for their withdrawal, you offered patience when they offered uncertainty. Your heart became a safe place they could return to whenever they wanted comfort. But empathy without boundaries can slowly become self-abandonment. You can understand why someone behaves a certain way without agreeing to keep experiencing the consequences of that behavior. Understanding them does not require sacrificing yourself for them. A guarded heart is not necessarily a closed heart forever. It can simply be a heart that now has standards. You are not withholding affection to manipulate anyone. You are not creating distance to make them chase you. You are giving yourself enough space to determine whether they are safe to trust again. That is a completely different intention. You are choosing healing over history. You are choosing evidence over promises. You are choosing consistency over temporary emotional intensity. When an avoidant person senses that change, they may feel conflicted because two opposing experiences can appear at once. They may want the closeness they previously avoided, while also feeling uncomfortable with the vulnerability required to regain it. Your boundary makes that conflict visible instead of allowing you to absorb it for them. Avoidant behavior can involve both a fear of emotional responsibility and a fear of emotional loss. That is why your absence can sometimes affect them more than your constant presence ever did. When you were always available, they could take space without fully experiencing what that space meant. They knew, consciously or unconsciously, that you were still there. But when you stop automatically providing emotional access, the situation changes. Now they have to experience the possibility that their choices actually changed something. They may begin to recognize that the person they once assumed would always wait has continued moving forward. That realization can be uncomfortable, but it is not something you need to fix for them. You do not have to rush back simply because they finally recognize what they risked losing. The strongest position is not trying to make an avoidant person regret leaving. It is reaching a place where their regret is no longer the reason you make your decisions. That distinction matters. If your entire strategy is designed to make them chase you, you are still emotionally organizing your life around their reactions. True growth happens when you stop needing a particular response from them. Whether they come closer, step away again, apologize, or remain silent, you still know who you are and what you require. That is emotional freedom. You are not trying to control their attachment system. You are controlling your own participation in the cycle. You can care about someone and still refuse to accept inconsistency. You can forgive someone and still maintain distance. You can remain compassionate without reopening a door that repeatedly left you hurting. This is why their return should not automatically be interpreted as proof that everything is fixed. It is simply an opportunity to observe what happens next. Do they communicate more clearly? Do they acknowledge what happened? Do they show consistency after the initial reconnection? Are they willing to move beyond occasional messages and emotional check-ins? Do they respect the boundaries you now have? These questions matter far more than the fact that they came back. Anyone can return when they feel lonely, nostalgic, uncertain, or curious. What separates genuine change from another repetition of the cycle is sustained behavior. You no longer need to decode every message or search for hidden meaning in every interaction. Let their actions provide the answer. Your role is not to convince them to become emotionally available. Your role is to decide whether what they offer is enough for you. And this is where your real power becomes obvious. It is not found in ignoring them, making them jealous, giving calculated responses, or pretending you never cared. It comes from becoming so grounded in yourself that their presence no longer determines your emotional state. You can speak without begging. You can listen without attaching yourself to every promise. You can remain kind without becoming available on demand. You can recognize their return without abandoning the boundaries that helped you heal. The old dynamic depended on you reacting to their distance. The new dynamic begins when you stop allowing their distance to dictate your behavior. They may notice the difference immediately, but the most important person who notices it is you. You finally understand that your worth was never determined by whether they stayed, left, or eventually came back. So if an avoidant person returns, do not rush to recreate the relationship exactly as it was. Slow down, observe, ask questions. Let consistency reveal intention. Protect the peace you built during their absence. If they genuinely want to reconnect, they will have an opportunity to demonstrate that through their behavior. If they only want to regain the emotional access they once enjoyed, your boundaries will make that clear too. Either way, you win because you are no longer abandoning yourself to keep someone else close. Their return is not necessarily an invitation to return to the past. It can simply be evidence that you have grown beyond the version of yourself that accepted uncertainty as love. You do not need to punish them. You do not need to chase them. You simply need to remain rooted in the self-respect you developed while they were gone. That is the transformation they cannot ignore. Their return does not automatically earn them access to you again. You are no longer impressed by when they decide to appear, and their sudden interest does not erase everything that happened before. You have learned that access to your emotional world should be built through consistency, not granted because someone disappeared and later became curious again. That is something they have to demonstrate through their actions. What they are really confronting is not simply the possibility of losing the relationship. They are confronting the loss of the version of you who accepted emotional imbalance for too long. You were once willing to give more, wait longer, understand more, and love beyond what their fear allowed them to receive. But that version of you has changed. Once you protect your healing, your guardedness stops being a weakness. It becomes evidence that you finally learned to value yourself. When they come back, keep your responses simple and composed. You do not need to write paragraphs explaining how their disappearance affected you. You do not need to chase answers or perform emotional labor just to make the interaction comfortable. Avoidant people may unconsciously expect you to step back into the role you previously played, the person who soothed their withdrawal, explained their silence, interpreted their confusing behavior, and carried the emotional weight whenever the connection became uncertain. They may be accustomed to you filling every empty space with reassurance, but when you stop doing that, the dynamic changes immediately. Instead of trying to validate them, you begin observing them. Instead of assuming what they mean, you let their behavior reveal their intentions. This can feel unfamiliar to them because they are no longer receiving the emotional support that previously allowed them to remain distant without fully confronting what their distance created. Avoidant behavior can feel safest when someone else constantly fills in the missing pieces. You may have once explained their behavior for them, softened their inconsistency, or convinced yourself that there was a deeper reason behind every withdrawal. That emotional cushioning protected them from having to look directly at their own actions. But when you stop doing that, they are left with their own behavior in plain sight. You are not attacking them. You are not judging them. You are simply refusing to create a more flattering explanation than their actions deserve. This is why measured responses can be so powerful. You allow the interaction to exist without immediately trying to repair it. If they are vague, you do not invent meaning. If they are inconsistent, you do not compensate. If they offer very little, you do not rush in with everything. You let their level of investment speak for itself instead of carrying the connection alone. Matching their pace does not mean becoming cold or deliberately playing games. It means refusing to sprint emotionally towards someone who is walking slowly toward you. If their communication is occasional, you do not build an entire emotional future around it. If their messages are unclear, you do not spend hours analyzing every word. If their effort remains minimal, you do not double your effort to keep the connection alive. You remain steady. You respond when you genuinely want to respond, and you allow space when space is appropriate. The goal is not to manipulate them into chasing you. The goal is to stop abandoning your own emotional needs in response to their behavior. You mirror reality instead of trying to repair it. If they are serious, they will eventually have to show that through greater consistency. If they are not, your boundaries will protect you from being pulled back into the same cycle. This is what emotional neutrality really looks like. You are not withholding validation to make them suffer. You are simply no longer giving unlimited emotional reassurance to someone who has not demonstrated that they can participate consistently. There is a difference between being emotionally unavailable and being emotionally selective. You can remain kind while refusing to overinvest. You can care about someone while still deciding that their current behavior is not enough for you. And this can be surprisingly powerful because the avoidant person may have become accustomed to your emotional availability being constant. They could disappear and still assume that your feelings remained exactly where they left them. Now they encounter someone who is calm, observant, and less reactive. Your emotions are not overflowing toward them anymore. You are no longer trying to rescue the connection. You are simply allowing it to reveal what it truly is. If you need to be direct, you can say something as simple as, "I'm not interested in going back to that connection. I've moved forward." There is no need to turn it into a speech. There is no need to list every disappointment or prove how deeply you were hurt. A clear boundary can be more powerful than an emotional explanation because it communicates that your decision is already made. Boundaries are not designed to punish another person. They are designed to make your position unmistakable. In the past, you may have softened your needs because you were afraid that being too direct would push them away. You may have swallowed disappointment, lowered expectations, or left the door slightly open just in case they returned. But growth teaches you that preserving a connection at the cost of your own peace is not real security. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is stop negotiating with a pattern that has already shown you what it is. A calm boundary carries a completely different energy from an angry rejection. Anger can create an argument. A calm decision leaves very little to argue about. You are not shouting, blaming, or demanding that they understand your pain. You are simply telling them where you stand now. That is what makes the message difficult to dismiss. You are not asking them to change. You are not asking them to apologize. You are not asking them to prove that they still care. You are making a decision about what you are willing to participate in. An avoidant person may have relied on your flexibility before, expecting you to compromise whenever they became uncomfortable. But when you stop negotiating against yourself, the old dynamic loses its foundation. They have to recognize that the relationship they once treated casually is no longer something you are willing to maintain casually. Your standard has changed, and you are not required to lower it simply because they have returned. When you tell someone, "I've moved forward," the strength of that statement comes from the fact that you do not need to convince them. It is not a threat, it is not a performance, it is simply the reality you have arrived at through your own healing. They may not like it, but they cannot change the fact that your experience changed you. Their absence was not meaningless, their silence had an effect. Their repeated distance taught you something about what you could and could not accept. The important part is that you no longer need them to understand every detail of that process. You understand it. That is enough. A boundary becomes powerful when you no longer use it as a negotiation tool. You are not saying, "If you do this, maybe I will come back." You are saying, "This is where I stand." That certainty gives your words weight because there is no hidden request underneath them. Once you have said what you need to say, do not feel obligated to keep the conversation going indefinitely. You do not have to linger simply because they have finally become available. Continuing a conversation can sometimes preserve the exact emotional access you are trying to change. An avoidant person may feel comfortable knowing that you are still there, still responding, still emotionally engaged, even if they are not offering genuine intimacy. They may prefer an open-ended connection where nothing is clearly defined and the emotional door never fully closes. But you are allowed to decide when the interaction has reached its natural end. You can leave calmly, without creating drama. You can say what needs to be said and then step away. This is not about controlling them. It is about controlling your own participation. You no longer need to remain in a conversation simply because they finally decided to enter it. For someone who is accustomed to controlling closeness through distance, your decision to leave first can feel like a major change. They may have been used to setting the pace, deciding when to approach, deciding when to withdraw, and assuming that you would remain available while they figured themselves out. But when you calmly end the interaction, you demonstrate that the pace of your life is no longer determined by their comfort level. You are not waiting for them to decide whether you deserve a place in their world. You are deciding whether they deserve continued access to yours. That distinction is enormous. Walking away first does not mean abandoning someone. Sometimes it means refusing to abandon yourself again. You are not storming away or trying to create an emotional reaction. You are simply recognizing when a conversation no longer serves you and giving yourself permission to step away. There may have been a time when ending the interaction yourself felt impossible. You might have held on to every sentence, every small sign of interest, and every possibility that things could finally change. You may have feared that if you stopped responding, the connection would disappear forever. But eventually, you learn that holding on to someone who cannot meet you emotionally is not the same as preserving love. Sometimes what you call loss is actually the end of a cycle that was keeping you emotionally stuck. Walking away becomes less frightening when you understand what you are walking toward. You are moving toward peace, self-respect, emotional stability, and relationships where you do not have to constantly prove that you are worth staying for. The goal is not to make them realize what they lost. The goal is to stop losing yourself while trying to keep them. Silence can also become meaningful when it comes from clarity instead of avoidance. For a long time, you may have been the one filling every uncomfortable pause. You explained what you meant, you clarified what they meant, you repaired misunderstandings, you reached out when they withdrew, you kept the emotional connection alive, even when they were barely participating. But when you finally stop filling every silence, the dynamic becomes very different. Your quiet is not designed to hurt them. It is simply the absence of the emotional labor you used to provide automatically. You are no longer volunteering to carry conversations that require two people. You are no longer chasing a response from someone who has repeatedly shown that they can disappear. The silence becomes a boundary because it says, without drama, that you are finished trying to force movement where there is none. The interesting thing about silence is that it removes your explanations from the equation. They can dismiss an emotional conversation. They can argue with your interpretation. They can tell themselves that you were simply upset. But when you stop engaging altogether, there is nothing to debate. You are not giving them another opportunity to redirect the conversation or turn your emotional response into the central issue. They are left with their own choices. They have to sit with the fact that you are no longer available to make their distance feel harmless. This does not mean they will suddenly become self-aware or change overnight. It simply means you have stopped participating in the part of the cycle that belonged to you. You cannot control whether they reflect, but you can control whether you continue providing the emotional bridge that allows the same pattern to continue.